Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. Ni le bien qu'on m'a fait, ni le mal, tout ça m'est bien égal. Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. C'est payé, balayé, oublié. Je me fous du passé. Avec mes souvenirs, j'ai allumé le feu. Mes chagrins, mes plaisirs, je n'ai plus besoin de balayer les amours avec leur trémolo, balayer pour toujours. Je repars à zéro. Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. Ni le bien qu'on m'a fait, ni le mal, tout ça m'est bien égal. Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. Car ma vie, car mes joies, aujourd'hui, ça commence avec toi.
I rode my bicycle past your window last night. I roller skated to your door at daylight. It almost seems like you're avoiding me. I'm okay alone, but you got something I need. Well, I got a brand new pair of roller skates. You got a brand new key. I think that we should get together and try them out, you see. I've been looking around a while. You got something for me. Oh, I got a brand new pair of roller skates. You got a brand new key. I ride my bike, I roller skate, don't drive no car. Don't go too fast, but I go pretty far. For somebody who don't drive, I've been all around the world. Some people say I done all right for a girl. Oh,
qué pena siente el alma cuando la suerte impía se opone a los deseos que anhela el corazón. Qué amargas son las horas de la existencia mía, sin olvidar tus ojos, sin escuchar tu voz. Amargas son las horas de la existencia mía, sin olvidar tus ojos, sin escuchar tu voz. Pero embargo a veces la sombra de la duda y por mi mente pasa como fatal visión. Pero embargo a veces la sombra de la duda y por mi mente pasa como fatal visión. Qué pena siente el alma cuando la suerte impía se opone a los deseos que anhela el corazón.
I see skies of blue and I see clouds of white and the brightness of day. I like the dark and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people passing by. I see friends shaking hands singing, how do you do? They really say, I love you. I hear babies cry and I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than we'll know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Someday I wish upon a star, wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where trouble melts like a lemon drops high above the chimney top. That's where you find me, oh, somewhere over the rainbow, way up high. The dreams that you dare to, why, oh why can't
Put a candle in the window, but I feel I've got to move. Oh, I'm gone, gone. I'll be coming home soon. Long as I can see the light, pack my bag and let's get moving. 'Cause I'm bound to trip wild. Oh, I'm gone, gone. You don't have to worry no. Long as I see the light. Guess I've got that old traveling bone. But if you won't leave me alone, but I won't lose my way, no, no. Long as I see the light. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. Put a candle in the window, but
有容，你还那个眼睛让我来摸，在我身旁，在困难时候，真朋友哪里找？就像那大渡河，解说我将带你过。就像那大渡河，解说我将带你过。当你的邮卷不出轨，当半夜来让我温暖里，相依为黑暗里，困苦中看释放，就像那大渡河，解说我将带你过，就像那大渡河，解说我将带你过。真期盼向前跑，金色女郎来追上你的梦想，一路顺风的期望，看你显身手。如果还需要我，我就在你左右，就像我大渡河，接着和你同向前，就像我大渡河，接着和你同向前。
We're going to start the program momentarily, so if we could ask that you take your seats, and then we'll have Dean Maroney come up and to welcome you.
I always know when Scott's at the microphone before me because the microphone's way up here. So, good morning, everyone. I'm Stacy Maroney, Dean of the School of Education, and I want to welcome you to the celebration of Beverly Warren's life. So, when Don contacted me, he said, "Do you think it's at all possible for us to have this event in the School of Education?" And I hesitated for like a nanosecond, and not even a nanosecond, and said, "Yes, this would be lovely." And so, thank you all for coming. This is a truly special day. So there are, you have the program, yes, it should be at your tables, that kind of chronicles what we'll do today. The music that you heard was actually songs that were important to Beverly. So we just finished up with, I think that's the Chinese version of Bridge Over Troubled Water, which when Don and I were talking, he said, that's the one I want. And so it's truly beautiful. And in case you missed it, we're going to repeat the soundtrack when we have lunch following the program. So our caterers are here. They're really good at being really quiet. So they'll be setting up for the lunch that will follow the program. So before we get started, I wanted to just give a couple of special thanks to my team for some of the things that they did working with Don and his family. So Chelsea Smith is in the back, and she did a number of things to get this all set up, including catering and so forth. And I have Chelsea as my administrative assistant for 2 more weeks. And then, so here's the thing. So she spent the last year in this role, and she said, you know, being in the School of Education has inspired me to want to be closer to K-12. So she's going to begin being a substitute teacher and volunteering in the Monroe County School Corporation. So yay, and I secretly think she wants to be a teacher. So in case you want to mention that to her, I think it's really great. So I will lose her, but what a wonderful next step for Chelsea. So thank you, Chelsea, for everything that you've done. Scott did the music program, and his team also helped with the programs that are at your table. So many thanks to them for their assistance. So we have a number of speakers, and they're listed in the program. And Gary, I think that you are the first listed. So we may want to just go in the order that's in the program, and then to follow for anyone who wants to talk about what Beverly meant to them personally. So I'll turn it over to you, Gary.
Thanks, Stacy, and thank you for hosting this. Don asked me to say a little bit about the Student Advocate's Office and Beverly's role in that. I have to admit I feel a little humble in this crowd saying that, because there are a lot of people who've been advocates longer than I have and have known Beverly longer than I have. But I'll try. A lot of my information comes from Sally Jones's valuable history of the Office of Student Affairs. Thank you. And some conversations with Sally and with Daryl Stone, the current director. I think probably Beverly would find it ironic, if not somewhat humorous, that a member of the advocate team dealing with student conduct started out by citing his references. Last year, the Student Advocate Office celebrated its 40th anniversary, meaning it was created in 1982. It was created by the combined effects of the Student Body Association and the Division of Student Affairs. And incidentally, the president of the IUSA at the time was Mark Cruzan, later to be mayor of Bloomington. So what's a student advocate? I think it's important to start off there, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about what Beverly's contribution was. The student advocates are not ombudsmen. We're not hearing officers. We're not lawyers, thank God. But we're partners with students. Not fixing people, but caring enough to enable students to solve their own problems, create their own plans. We listen without judgment. We help students understand their rights and responsibilities. We assist students in drawing up action plans, connecting them to resources, and helping them develop problem-solving and life and leadership skills. Over the years, the advocate's role has grown and developed, partly because the university has grown in size and in complexity. These three types of support are, first of all, the academic support, which relates to withdrawing from courses and grade change appeals. Second is the conduct support, which involves potential violations of the student code. And third is emergency financial assistance, which was a special role that Beverly played in the advocate's office. There's an image that's probably overused, but still, I think, appropriate to Beverly, and that is standing on the shoulder of giants. Beverly was without doubt one of those giants. She became director in 1992 after serving as acting director in 1991, and she retired in 2001. She was the first full-time director that had sole responsibility for the Office of Student Advocate, following giants like Pam Friedman and Kathy Rogers. One of the things that happened during this period was the growth in the number of cases, the number of students that were seeking support. When Beverly first became director, there were 489 cases. A year later, there were 583. Today, there are over 3,000. Overall, as Darrell Ann said, Beverly took the vision of the Student Advocate Office and gave breadth and depth to it. She improved the assessment and record keeping by acquiring technical support. She developed mediating services to students, and once in a while she used those mediating services with faculty and advocates. You didn't hear me say that. She also taught a course in mediation here at the School of Education. She developed and provided training opportunities for graduate students and staff. And then, as I said, one of the major accomplishments was she recognized the growing demand for emergency financial assistance, worked with academic and administrative units in creating, and sometimes very creative ways of finding financial assistance. This idea has become very potent in our day now. You can imagine what it was like during the pandemic. Last year, through various sources, the Student Advocate Office and the Division of Student Affairs awarded over $3 million to students. Since last July, the SAO and the Division of Student Affairs has awarded over $46,000 from Beverly Warren Fund alone. Beverly was creative in strengthening contacts and connections with academic units, not only in terms of financial assistance, but in terms of services and resources that students needed. She increased the number of advocates and professional staff. She demonstrated her own devotion by understanding that student needs weren't confined to 10 months. And so she worked throughout her tenure. She worked 12 months and was paid for 10. Beverly never lost sight of individual students, their needs, their potential, and she never lost sight of what advocates could be and do. But she also never lost sight of what the Student Advocate Office could be in the future. She was a giant whose shoulders we stand on today to affect the lives of thousands of students, enabling them to complete their degrees, but also to be active, generous, and hopefully caring citizens. Thanks.
Okay, this isn't going to be anything like Gary's. It's very difficult for me to capture Beverly's essence and exuberance, but here goes. As you may know, Beverly was endlessly curious and adventurous. In the words of John Lewis, she liked good trouble. When I met Bev in Hawaii, we traversed the island of Oahu in depth. We visited every park, every garden, every museum, and every beach, and the bigger the waves, the better. Bev was fearless. When visiting the Warrens in Bethesda, Bev and I drove into Washington, D.C. When we found a parking spot that was too tiny, Bev got out of our car and pushed the car in front of us, creating a perfect spot for us to park. We were able to see the Smithsonian and all of Washington, D.C. Bev was a gracious hostess. All were welcome in her home and many times treated to coffee and donuts, not to mention the endless supply of iced tea and Diet Coke. We'll miss her warmth, her sense of humor, and her all-encompassing empathy for everyone she met.
It's wonderful to be here today to celebrate Beverly Warren, beloved wife and mother, and treasured friend. Thanks to the Warren family, Will, Ben, and Dawn, for giving me the opportunity to share thoughts about Beverly. I had the privilege of knowing Beverly for over 20 years. She was a guest at our house for many, many dinners, just as we were guests in her home for many, many dinners. She and Don were with us at some of our most important family gatherings, our son's high school graduation, and our 40th wedding anniversary. We had several vacation times with Beverly and Don. A cruise, a trip to Hilton Head, and a few treks to Florida for spring break. So many memories are associated with those special times. During the early years, Beverly and I would make day trips to Indy for shopping and lunch. I chuckle when I remember those times because Beverly had extraordinary diligence and patience when it came to shopping. It always seemed to me that she knew exactly what she wanted and was determined to find exactly what she wanted, and that she had the patience to do so, no matter how long it took. Beverly loved to cook, and she was good at it. She was fearless, I think, about it in many ways, and in like so many aspects, other aspects of her life, she seemed fearless to me. The chicken artichoke casserole, I should say, I found a recipe that she had given to me years ago. The chicken artichoke recipe was typed on a 3x5 index card and was, according to Beverly, vintage 40s or 50s Lafayette, Louisiana Junior League. Thinking about Beverly and the Junior League made me wonder and smile. The recipe called for rat cheese, Beverly noted that she wasn't sure what rat cheese actually was, but no problem. Here's how she improvised. I remember that everything Beverly served seemed a bit unique, but more importantly, delicious. And it was always served with flair. Unlike myself, Beverly was not intimidated by the number of ingredients required for a recipe. In fact, after she came to know me better, she gave me the 6 ingredients or less cookbook. Similarly, Beverly wasn't intimidated by out-of-the-ordinary ingredients. She would just get in the car and drive and drive and drive and drive from store to store until she found what she needed. Distance wasn't an issue. Just as distance wasn't an issue, Beverly was never concerned about identifying the easy path. And she generally seemed to take everything in stride. During a trip to Vietnam, although a bit surprised, but without missing a beat, she got on the back of a motor scooter for a private tour. It was Beverly's idea to organize a large group and drive to Mooresville to eat at the Cajun restaurant that she had discovered. Beverly also organized a gathering and a meeting to the Porthole Inn. She called to make reservations, and wasn't she surprised that the Porthole Inn, in fact, you didn't need to make reservations at the Porthole Inn. But just to be sure that we were there and there on time, we all went very early so that we could be in the audience when her colleague from work, and I don't know if that colleague is here today, we could maybe follow up on that to find out, performed in a country western band. On one of the Florida trips, Beverly insisted upon taking the pontoon boat to the beach, using the sand-accessible wheelchair, and getting into the water, even though she had injured her foot the day before. She was determined. And although some of us were encouraging her to not feel compelled, Beverly could not be dissuaded from always, and I do mean always, providing rides to a fellow bridge player whose husband was able, but who absolutely refused to drive his wife to bridge. Beverly's warmth and generosity were the essence of her very being, and I, for one, experienced and benefited from this side of Beverly on numerous occasions, always with a twinkle in her eye, in ways that seemed so natural and easy. She acknowledged, embraced, and supported those she encountered. When my 80-year-old mother decided to move to Bloomington, Beverly assured me that she would help my mom get settled in. And she did. I'll never forget the day Mom came to dinner, and she had been at lunch with Beverly at the University Women's Club. And my mom got out of her car, and she held her calendar in her hand, and she said, "I've got plans." And she was waving that calendar to me. That was such a gift to my mom and to us, really. Thank you, Beverly. Almost 20 years ago now, Beverly and Don were one of the 18 original hand-in-hand donors in a Stone Belt, which is a Stone Belt program that collects non-perishable foods from donors and takes the food to the community kitchen. When an article about the program was on the front page of the HT, Beverly had a copy framed for us. Beverly paid attention to what was going on in our life and in the lives of others. And in addition, She cared and responded in ways that demonstrated her concern and understanding. It seems to me that Beverly Warren found joy in helping others. Time and time again, I know she took folks, like my mom, into her heart and under her wing, and enabled them to see a path forward, and generally, a better path. And while I know there are hundreds, thousands, millions of Beverlys in this world, it doesn't matter. Beverly Warren is our Beverly, and she always has been and always will shine the brightest.
It is truly an honor to be here this morning in this space to celebrate Beverly Warren's life and the lives she touched while on this earth. A wealth of words is available to describe Beverly's rich life. Many of those words you're hearing today. The two words, though, that come to mind when I think of this wonderful woman and friend are engaged and engaging. Beverly was truly an engaging person. She was charming, smart, likable, determined, affable, warm, and friendly. But perhaps more importantly, when you met her, you felt engaged by her. She did not simply listen to you, but she heard you. And as she heard you, she thought about all the things that you were thinking about, the ideas, the feelings, the dispositions that you were sharing, and responded with genuine care and wise counsel. It has been more than 30 years since I first met Beverly. Don, who was named the dean of this school of education, had just arrived on the scene when he hired me as his administrative assistant. It was the beginning of a special relationship with both Don and Beverly that I will always recall with gratitude and great fondness. Don and Beverly were devoted to the art of hospitality and were the consummate hosts. There is a difference between entertaining and hospitality, and I want to be clear that Don and Beverly practiced the latter, which requires a much deeper commitment to those who are in your presence. When I worked with Don, I oversaw the school holiday gatherings, and they were always at Don and Beverly's home. In fact, there was never a discussion of where they would be held, and every year for the decade that Don was served as dean, the school gathered at the Warrens on a Sunday afternoon for a warm, cozy, conversation-rich event. Their home was always welcoming, and no one left hungry for anything except the next gathering. But of all the memories I have of those days, I remember Beverly's presence at those events the most. While the events were catered, it was Beverly who brought warmth and cheer to the space, especially the kitchen where so many of us gathered. She was always knee-deep into making sure that everyone had what they needed. She never did this in any hurried fashion. Rather, she was purposeful about her actions. Her conversations with me and with others made each of us feel as if we were the most important person in the room. She made me and everyone feel a part of something, not just someone passing through. I would recall it as creating a feeling of family. And that laugh Oh, that laugh, that infectious laugh. It was a cross between a hearty chuckle and an outright guffaw. And I can see that twinkle in the eye as Carol Ann described. That was Beverly. And Beverly even included our son Jeremy and his friend Matt in the festivities in their home. They served as coat checkers and got to run up and down the stairs, checking and retrieving coats. Beverly treated them just like they had been there all along, just like family. And this was Beverly, through and through, generous to the core. School holiday gatherings were not the only occasions where I witnessed Beverly's warmth and caring friendship. There were many dinners served at the Warrens with Beverly busy in the kitchen, making a meal for friends to enjoy. These occasions sometimes included educators from other states and even other countries. I particularly recall friends from China who remained friends of Don and Beverly's throughout the years. It was these times that I learned a lot from observing Beverly and the ways in which she engaged everyone present. She was thoughtful about the food she made, and there usually was a delightful story that accompanied the food selections, from a former family recipe or a favorite country where she and Don traveled. She was all about sharing her experiences and adventures with others, and many of us in this room were the benefactors of her loving, caring, and engaging storytelling and approach to life. Once the years of working with Don concluded, what remained was an enduring friendship with him and Beverly, for which I will always be exceedingly grateful. My husband Tom and I were blessed to host Beverly and Don in our home for holiday gatherings and other occasions as well. Those gatherings, again, always produced one of Beverly's favorite desserts, and once again, her way of selecting and serving the dish was always a highlight of those gatherings. One of the more unforgettable evenings at our home was the night before Tom Scritchfield, the former and very shrewd finance officer in the School of Education for many years, entered the hospital the next morning for a serious surgery. Sadly, Tom passed away in the hospital, but I would like to think that his last meal with us, and especially Beverly's warmth and care towards Tom, held him in those final days. Beverly's way of being in the world did not only touch me, but was extended to my children and grandchildren. When Don and Beverly traveled, especially when they spent considerable time in China, they returned with gifts for me, but as well as gifts for my children and my grandchildren. Each gift was chosen with an eye towards that person, not just some random choice, but a specially selected gift, which I'm sure she took Don on many shopping sprees, and they spent countless hours picking out that perfect gift. And when my brother-in-law, Dave, first moved to town, guess what? It was Beverly who spent time with him, counseling him on where in town his skill set might flourish in a workplace. Beverly's reach was wide and long because she cared about the people around her. As the late Eleanor Roosevelt said so simply and beautifully, many people will walk in and out of your life, but only true friends will leave footprints in your heart. I am so deeply thankful to Beverly for her friendship and all the memories of her that we hold so dear, and it's been a privilege to have known her. We were family, not just friends, and I will carry her in spirit until I see her again.
Much has been said today about Beverly from individuals who knew her in a range of settings. My relationship with Beverly began more than 30 years ago when Ed and I welcomed the Warrens to Bloomington as Don assumed the dean of the School of Education. It was my privilege to count her as a friend, and in our time together, I quickly recognized her as a feminist and a strong advocate for students. Beverly had many qualities, but most notably was her presence. When you were with Beverly, you had her undivided attention for as long as you needed it. I count myself privileged to have been counted among her friends. Now, time is too short to cite examples. Instead, I'm going to share a couple of poems with you written by Mary Oliver. The first one, she tries to answer the question, what is the greatest gift? What is the greatest gift? Could it be the world itself, the oceans, the meadowlark, the patience of the trees and the wind? Could it be love with its sweet clamor of passion? Something else entirely holds me in thrall. That you have a life that I wonder about more than I wonder about my own. That you have a life, courteous intelligence, that I wonder about more than I wonder about my own. That you have a soul, your own, no one else's, that I wonder about more than I wonder about my own. So that I find my soul clapping its hands for yours more than my own. Beverly indeed had this gift. Beverly's life was a full life. Her accomplishments were many. You've heard a number of these this morning. So that she could echo these sentiments of Mary Oliver. When death comes, like the hungry bear in autumn, when death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me and snaps the purse shut, when death comes like the measles pox, when death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades, I want to step through the door full of curiosity, wondering, what is it going to be like, that cottage of darkness? And therefore, I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and I look upon time as no more than an idea, and I consider eternity as another possibility. And I think of each life as a flower, as common as a field daisy and as singular, and each name a comfortable music and something precious to this earth. When it's over, I want to say all my life I was a bride married to amazement. I was the bridegroom taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I've made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. Beverly, you did not just visit this world, you gifted it beyond measure, and we who celebrate you today are richer because of you.
+60 years ago, the Navy taught me that the farther back you are in the chow line, the faster you have to eat. And so I'm going to be pretty brief. As you've just heard, people have many fond memories of Beverly, and I'm no different. I don't remember the first time I met Beverly, though I suspect that it was the Briggs Bend house where that happened, not long after she and Don moved to Bloomington so that Don could become the dean of the School of Education. But I do remember when I really came to know Beverly. It was in the fall of the year 2000 when I began work for her as a student advocate. And at the time I didn't know it, but very close to the time when she wouldn't give up her position as the director of the student advocate. As the junior advocate, I was assigned the Friday afternoon shift. And as many of you know, Fridays could be strange. Some were very hectic, Students realized they only had a few hours left before a long weekend, so they rushed to the office, but others could be really quiet. And it was on those quiet fall afternoons that Beverly taught me, by example, how to be a student advocate. The Beverly I came to know and appreciate had an amazing compassion for students, something that lives on, of course, through the Beverly Warren Emergency Fund that's already been mentioned several times here today. No matter how frustrating or tense the situation, and I can see that several of you know what that means, Beverly remained calm, and she seemed to know just when to inject her warm and, yes, wry sense of humor, which always seemed to relieve the tenseness of the situation. She often called on an amazing network of campus contacts that she had developed, who trusted her and who would pitch in to help resolve problems for students. Thinking back over the years that I served as a student advocate, a case Beverly coached me through that very first fall semester was the most gratifying of any I would encounter over the next 2 decades. Beverly was, for me, a perfect role model. She became a valued and a trusted friend. One of the greatest compliments that my dad could make about someone was to refer to them as a good person. To him, that meant that they were honest, kind, trustworthy, reliable, a pleasure to be around. In short, someone you were glad to know or have known. So in that respect, allow me to apply that characterization to Beverly Warren, who was, as my dad would say, a good person. Don has asked at this time asked me to ask you if there are any of you in the audience who would like to say anything about Beverly. Everything's already been said, it sounds like. Sally. Use your classroom voice, Sally. Just boom it out.
Well, I just want to say that my name is Sally Jones, and I first met Beverly when I was the coordinator for Returning Women Students, which is a program that no longer exists, but did in the Continuing Studies department at the university. And Beverly and I would often call upon each other when we had a student who had special needs. And hearing these inspiring words about Beverly and agreeing with all of them and knowing that I'm someone who was mentored by Beverly and have a tremendous amount, I was inspired by her and I have a tremendous amount of respect for her. I just wanted to share a short story about a student who we helped and what that student is doing today. And so this was back in the early 90s. And I had a returning woman student, and what that means is I had a student who was over the age of 25. She was a single mom. She was majoring in education, and she had 2 children. And oftentimes the problems that my undergraduates had were not the problems that I found when I later worked in the advocate's office. They hadn't been caught with a beer in their room, you know, those kinds of things. They didn't have enough money for childcare or, you know, other things. It was financial needs or attendance issues because their children had been sick, things like that. And this student that we were helping had a problem because she had a financial emergency. And So I called Beverly because I knew about this, at the time, very tiny emergency fund that they had. This student was short of buying one textbook that she needed for a required course. And of course, Beverly was wonderful. She fit the student in right away. And so that textbook then was a big help to that student. And I was so proud to be able to, when you're an advocate, you don't often hear from students once their problem has been solved, which is natural and the way it ought to be. When you are coordinator of returning women students, you're lucky because those are friends that you've made for life. So I'm still in touch with this student, and I was so happy to be able to share with Beverly this story, that this student graduated from college, her children have grown up, they graduated from high school, they have now graduated from college. She became a leader in special education in her school district. She was the director of special education in her school district. Her children are doing well. One of her children now has children who is doing well. And what brought this to my mind too, in addition to the stories of Beverly, is that I just spoke with this former student about 2 months ago, and she's retiring next year. Very happily, looking forward to it. And so I was really thrilled to be able to share this story with Beverly of a student who was struggling. And Beverly and I would never take credit for what this student accomplished. She did that on her own. But I think Beverly and I both felt, and especially Beverly, in her graciousness, in her willingness to help, in her non-judgmental way of looking forward and being sort of proud to partner with the student. And that's something that's inspired me from Beverly. That's kind of the legacy she left, not just to this student, but to me, and I know countless other people. So thanks for listening.
Good morning, everyone. I'll take this off. My name is Annie Willis, and I'm with the Division of Student Affairs, Dean of Students Office, and I get the honor every day to work with students who apply for the Beverly Warren Emergency Assistance Fund. I want you to know that Mrs. Warren's fund is feeding students, helping them in emergency situations with their rent, with technology, with travel, with dental emergencies, with other mental health is a big issue. So her fund every day is helping students. I get to read their stories every day. I'm honored to be able to work with Dean Andy Kalis at the Dean of Students Office. I worked for Sally. She turned a program over to me when she retired from the Student Advocates Office. I worked with Darrell Stone as the most current director of the Student Advocates Office. But I want you to know that every day, her legacy continues to bless and touch the lives of many students. And I'm so very honored, Mr. Warren, to have the honor to serve students in the memory of your dear, wonderful wife. And I thank you and thank your family and thank all her colleagues. And I am also a graduate of the School of Education. I earned my Master's of Science and my Master's in Counseling and Guidance from the School of Education. And I also worked for Don Hostler with financial aid, and he also made sure that we also had funding to help students. But Mrs. Warren's fund stands out. It continues to be the brightest star on this campus. And please consider contributing to her legacy, to her fund, because the students need it. Every single dime matters. So please help, and thank you so much.
Anybody else? Okay, is it time to eat? should have looked at the program.
So just a couple more things, and then One World Catering is finishing up the setup, so it should be ready momentarily. I did want to also acknowledge our Executive Director of Development, Mary Dwyer, and she has very conveniently placed cards where if you do wish to contribute to one of Beverly's funds, you can do that by filling out the card. Of course, you can also do that online. Both of these funds are so important. And finally, this is sort of self-serving on my part, but those of you who know me a little bit, learning spaces is something that I've dedicated much of my life to in my professional life. And you might remember the cafe. It wasn't really a cafe, it was a vending machine place. And it needed a little love after 30 years. So I was able to turn the lights on in there. Of course, it's secured for the weekend, but you'll be able to get a sense of what that space might look like. I will tell you, it opened up the first day of the spring semester, and it was packed with students. So this is a wonderful opportunity for our students to come together to gather. Our doc students were saying, you know what? There's no place for us to get good coffee and to sit and talk, and now we have this. And then, unfortunately, my key doesn't work to the library, so I can't turn the lights on, but we do have kind of a general floor plan. This, if you'll remember, was a library that, it's 30 years old, and so it was showing its age. And, Jeanette and I had this conversation, and Terry too. I think we talked about this when I was in my previous position. And it's so nice to have been able to use some donor funds to make this a reality. So it should open up in March, and there's lots of books that will be arriving soon. And it's, of course, behind schedule, but it should be open sometime this semester. So, and again, we think around the March timeframe. So you can peek your head in. It is a little bit hard to see the detail, but there is a floor plan right there. So with that, so our One World Catering team, how are we doing? You're doing great. That's awesome. Okay, so yes, they were just. This is an excellent caterer, and I think you'll enjoy. It's a taco bar, and there's desserts and drinks. And then, as I mentioned earlier, Scott's going to replay the music that's listed in your program, the prelude music. So do listen to some of Beverly's most favorite songs. Please socialize and enjoy the lunch. And thank you for coming.
Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. Ni le bien qu'on m'a fait, ni le mal. Tout ça m'est bien égal. Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. C'est payé, balayé, oublié. Je me fous du passé. Avec mes souvenirs, j'ai allumé le feu. Mes chagrins, mes plaisirs, je n'ai plus besoin de balayer les amours avec leur trémolo, balayer pour toujours. Je repars à zéro. Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. Ni le bien